Whenever you're ready, Deb.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be posted online per the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board's public participation plan. If anyone online should experience difficulties during the meeting, please send a message in the chat box and Cindy or I will manage it for you. First of all, let's approve the March 2024 minutes. Does anybody have any questions or changes to the minutes? Okay. They were sent out with the meeting announcement messages, and I'm not hearing from anybody. So with no changes, are there any objections to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, they are accepted. Next, I'm going to share some information from my employer, which is the Chesapeake Region Safety Council, and our outreach programs, and that is the mock crash program. We did, with help from some wonderful partners, a mock crash program at Mount St. Joseph's. It was the first one that we had done for this particular season. It was April 16th, and it's the first time that we had done it at Mount St. Joseph's. The focus of the program was distracted driving. The scenario involved the teen driver being distracted by a couple of his passengers sharing Snapchats. And it was a single vehicle crash, which isn't as exciting for the first responders and the fire department personnel. But we wanted to minimize the extensiveness of this particular scene since it's the first time we had done one there. I feel like it went really well. We got great feedback afterwards. I have the before and after surveys. We are presently analyzing them, and there's some concern as to whether or not we got the results in the right order from the school. When they gave us the results, some of the outcomes were switched for some of the questions. So the order of the answers was different in a couple of the different questions from, starting with always and going to never. A couple of the questions started with never and went to always, and we're not sure we have the results right yet, which is why we're not releasing them. And then afterwards, Dr. Bayhuth went in the auditorium and talked with them about the outcomes of the crash scene itself and how the injuries were resulted from the crash. And we also had a guest speaker. It was Suzanne Elsie, and she's always very moving. We have had a request from a Harford County school. We're not ready to release it yet, for next May. And we expect to do Mount St. Joseph's again next year. We are almost fully booked up for April of next year already. We have 4 schools confirmed with dates and 2 others that have requested. So that program is taking off to the point where April won't be anything but crash scenes for us, at least. And that's all I've got. So next up is Kenna Williams. Ken, I can't see whether you're on or not.
I'm here.
Okay. Go ahead and get started when you're ready.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. Is that sharing?
Yes.
Now I gotta start the show. Good morning. My name is Kenna Swift, and I'm with Sherry Matthews Group. We are a communications, outreach, PR, advertising, communications firm for the Look Alive campaign under Baltimore Metropolitan Council, funded by the Highway Safety Office. And I know I've presented to this group in the past, so I'm just giving a quick update, but just a refresher if anyone's new. Really, the goals and objectives of this campaign is to alert the greater Baltimore metro area of safety tips for drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists on how to keep each other safe on the road. with the ultimate goal of helping reduce pedestrian and bicyclist injuries and fatalities in the region. And we use a variety of outreach, paid media, social media, street teams. We have a virtual reality challenge, and we also use earned media to amplify efforts. We do a really big push in the fall as that aligns with the increase in pedestrian crashes, in particular Pedestrian Safety Month. But we also are wrapping up a small little spring effort. So that's what I'm going to just give a brief update on. We have a partnership with the Baltimore County Police Department. And we really appreciate them being involved in the program because we know that high visibility enforcement gets results on the media and influencing behavior. And so basically what we do with them is we outline time and place for them to do police activities around the enforcement of laws that protect pedestrians and bicyclists. And often that's step out enforcement where there's a decoy police officer who is stepping into the crosswalk, and if drivers fail to yield with their cars, then they radio their buddy up the road and pull the driver over to give them some education on the matter, and citation warnings or citations, whichever is applicable. And we invite the media to come, so they might do 1 or 2 events, and that might reach 40 or 50 drivers, but then we invite media to cover it, so that reaches 1 million drivers or drivers a million times. So we invite media to come. We we have a spokesperson there who can do interviews and give those important safety tips. And so we worked with Baltimore County Police Department to do an activation on April 27th. And really that earned media coverage amplifies the efforts to reach that broader audience. And we had a great response from the media. We had 18 media placements, 14 of those were broadcast. And that reached over $6 million in publicity value. Had some great news stories online as well, video news stories, and we just have a few screenshots of the coverage there: NBC, CBS, Fox, so all the major, definitely major network success there. Moving into fall, the way we structure this account is where we, as I mentioned, do a big push in the fall. You can see here, there's a reason October is Pedestrian Safety Month. We know that crashes tend to peak in the fall, and with shorter daylight hours, the sun sets earlier, it gets up later, and so we want to reach folks with our messaging at that critical time of year. You also have the time change, and that leads you into November and December. And you can see by this chart that that's a really important time to be out. So with the way this account is structured, we go out hard in September leading up to October. So our bus ads are up and running. Our media materials are ready for Pedestrian Safety Month. And we get a ramp up there. So we'll have bus ads and digital video running on paid media leading up to Pedestrian Safety Month, approaching that dangerous time of year. I'm sure most of you are familiar with our Signal Woman spokesperson. We have a sundry of videos covering multiple safety tips, and she is either in the signal or popping in and out of sidewalks or back seats, and also on the back of buses. So she appears and gives safety messages, and we can share a link to those resources in the chat. Also this year, this is new, we have a partnership with Orioles Stadium, and we'll have rotating LED signage all season long. That's up there. This is an old picture. We've changed it a little bit. And then we will also have the Look Alive virtual reality challenge inside the stadium to reach folks who are going to the game, fans of the game, with our Signal People safety ambassadors. And if you're not familiar with the virtual reality challenge, folks have a headset that they put on, and it's projected on the big screen. We have 3 scenarios that are associated with, that are high risk, associated with crashes. That's the multiple threat stop when you pull up to an intersection next to another vehicle, the having the car sort of block that visual of a pedestrian crossing, a right hook across a bike path, and also a left turn on an unprotected left turn, pedestrians and bicyclists coming there. And so it's an educational tool where folks can spot the pedestrians and bicyclists with the turn of the head. It really drives home the message that pedestrians can't always be seen, and you need to learn about these high risk scenarios so you know specifically where to be on highest alert. And also as a pedestrian, warning maybe where drivers might not be able to see you. And so it's one of my favorite pedestrian safety efforts because it is so experiential and memorable, and also is so much more nuanced than anything you could put on a billboard, because we all know that pedestrian safety is one of the most challenging pedestrian or traffic safety topics. So we're excited about that. We'll be at Oriole Stadium inside the gates on September 21st and 22nd, which is Car Free Day. So if you're coming to the game, come by and see us. And I think that is all I have for today.
So I have a question in reference to that. If an organization is interested in seeing if the virtual reality program can come to an event, who would they contact? Would it be you?
Yeah, they can contact me on that. I think in the past, we had, and now the convertible is white, so it matches our palette a little bit more for the campaign. But we would have to sort of negotiate on what funds can cover the virtual reality event. Okay. So either we can talk about that if there are funds available, or if there's someone else. We've had pre-pandemic, we almost had it like you could rent it and have it come to your event. And we sort of had a model for that, and that was very successful. But we could also talk about what campaign funds are available. That just, we have more players that we need to involve on that, but we'd love to get it in as many places as we can.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's in our region, we definitely have some things built in to the grant to be able to do that with, especially with local outreach. And hopefully we'll hear soon, I guess it's August or September, we'll hear about FY25 funding if we have that to continue. So that was in that proposal as well too.
Yeah,
local outreach.
Yeah, shoot me an email, Debbie. It also depends on timing of the fiscal year that ends September 30th.
Right. Okay. I have something in mind, and I think it might be an interesting opportunity for both of us. So yeah, I'll reach out.
Great.
Any other questions for Kenna? Okay. So next, we're going to hear from our National Highway Traffic Safety Administration partners about some upcoming safety initiatives. And I'm hoping Frank is on. I'm looking at a different screen.
I'm here.
Perfect.
Just fire up the power. All right. So good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Debbie, and thanks, Cindy, for inviting me to the meeting just to talk about a couple things. What I'm going to talk about this morning, just take a few minutes to talk about some of the numbers nationally, and then some new stuff, along with some campaigns that we have coming up throughout the summer months. So right now, these are our current numbers. It's still a crisis. Traffic fatalities are truly a public health crisis, and it affects everybody. 42,514 lives lost in 2022, and the big three riskiest behaviors are still speed, unrestrained occupant fatalities, which I'll talk a little bit more of here in a minute, and alcohol impaired driving fatalities. Those are the three that, if we can truly make some changes here and truly have some campaigns that and we can drive those numbers down from these three, and these three are interconnected. We have people that are driving impaired and not wearing their seatbelts or driving too fast. All three of those at the same time. And so if we can start affecting these three riskiest behaviors, and I would even say, although the data isn't there to support, I would say distracted is in here as well, because we don't have that data. It's self-reported. So the chances of somebody saying after a crash, oh yeah, officer, I was on my cell phone and that's why I had the crash, that's far and few between. As a law enforcement officer, I think I had that happen to me one time where somebody said that. Other than that, people are mum about it. So that's probably our fourth one to kind of think about. But these three are the three that we really want to start really focusing on, and that can drive our numbers down. Because as we all know, those 42,514, they're not just numbers, they're family members, they're mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles. We can go on and on and on. They're valued members of our communities. So it doesn't affect just that one person or just that one family. For that, every single fatality, every single death on our roadways, there's probably about 200 people that are affected. So when you start doing the math, it's a huge number. And we really want to start bringing those numbers down. There is some good news. The first quarter from 2023 looks like it was about 3% less than first quarter 2022. So we're going in the right direction. But as you'll see here in the next slide or two, we still have some areas that we need to really, really work on. You can see here from alcohol impaired driving fatalities and speed, and we're going to talk more about speed as well. There are some areas where we really, really need to work on. This is just from a report that just came out when we talk about seatbelts. A lot of our states have really good numbers. When we do this, when everybody does a seatbelt survey, Maryland is up at like 93% or 92 something, almost 93%. Some other states are up, all of our states are doing really well, except Virginia doesn't have a primary seatbelt law. So they're still below that, well below. They're in the 70s for seatbelt compliance. But for all our states with a primary seatbelt law, when they do the seatbelt survey, we do seatbelt surveys in June, which just probably wrapped up. We have some really great numbers for doing the observational survey. But then when we look at fatalities, we see across the board, across the United States, Maryland isn't alone in this. Region 3 isn't alone in this, as I'll show you here in a second. 50% of our fatalities are unbelted occupants and unbelted drivers. So think about that. If from that previous slide, we had unrestrained 11,302. We could cut that number in half just by wearing seatbelts. I understand, and from being a crash reconstructionist for all those years, there's some crashes that are just not going to be survivable because they're traveling too fast, for instance. But wearing your seatbelt is your best protection in that vehicle. And I realize I'm speaking to the choir here, that we all know that. But my challenge to everybody on this meeting and anybody that watches in the future is to kind of pass that message along. Pass that message along to friends and family members. Pass that message along to coworkers. We all have, whether we're working in as a first responder, where we're working in highway safety, doing engineering, or fixing roadsides along the side of the road, whatever we do, whatever brings us to this meeting, pass that along. Pass that information on to your colleagues and families and friends. We all have somebody that we know still doesn't wear their seatbelt. I have one, and it surprised me. My cousin's husband, I was at an event in April, a big family reunion for my aunt's 100th anniversary. And I was talking about what I do at NHTSA, and my cousin's husband, a very educated man. He was an engineer for NASA before he retired. And he said, well, Frank, I don't wear my seatbelt. And it just blew my mind that somebody this educated would still not be wearing a seatbelt. So we all have, and this is how we're going to save lives, because look at these numbers. We have people that are driving around in vehicles. 50% of our fatalities are still folks that are unbelted in those cars. And here's how we line up with our states. Maryland's right there at 50%. You can see Region 3, all of our Region 3 states are right there around 50, 57%. West Virginia is up at 60%. Delaware is doing a little bit better at 36%, but you could make the argument that's still too many. So this is just my little plug for, please we're going to talk about some other messaging and some things that we have coming up in the summer that deal with speed and impaired driving. But I just want to also mention that please anytime you can preach the information and tell people to wear their seatbelts, please do that. Please get that messaging out there, because we're still losing too many people in crashes, and that can be prevented. We still have this 50% of people that are unbelted in traffic fatalities. These are the numbers we really need to start focusing on and drive down. So please, along with the other messaging I'm going to talk about here in a second, please pass it along to other folks that have them wear their seatbelts. It only takes a second. And look, I come from law enforcement. I know just about everybody in the meeting here. I come from law enforcement. You know that. Law enforcement in 2022, 40 of the officers killed in traffic fatalities, 43% of them weren't wearing their seatbelts. So law enforcement is not doing so well either. They're a small subset of our population, and look, they're right there with what we're seeing across the United States with unbelted fatalities. So please wear your seatbelts and please pass that message along. Okay, on to some things we have coming up. In 2023, there was a big meeting of NVA administrators from the Northeast region. So it was kind of like Maryland North and really up into Canada. And those folks were all getting together in Wilmington, and they decided, hey, let's do some speed enforcement along I-95. Here's a great chance. We're having this big conference. Here's a chance to get out there and do something. And then we had a press event, and it grew from 5 Region 3 states. Initially, they came to us from Region 3, and it grew to Regions 1 and 2, the kind of the New England states, and the states right above us with New York and Pennsylvania. And then Region 4, states below us, all the way down to Florida, said, hey, we went into, and we did this big I-95 speed campaign, which was very successful. We did it in July. It had a press event like July 10th, and then the following week was border to border. All the states that had I-95 go through it, did enforcement, speed enforcement, all throughout an entire day at different times. And we had some really great results. So that brings us to this year. And the law enforcement liaisons know about it, and the highway safety officers know about it. But we're doing it again in 2024, but we're not just limited it to I-95, because we had some other states come to us like West Virginia and Alabama and Tennessee, and they said, we want in too. We want to do speed enforcement as well. We have some highways like I-81 and I-80 and I-79 that go through our jurisdictions, that go through our states, and that's just a couple that I mentioned. We also have our feeder roads and other roadways that we want to do speed enforcement on, because we're seeing speed as an issue here in our state. So I coupled with the folks in Region 1 and Region 2 and Region 4 again, and it's going to be all 4 NHTSA regions and all the states, so 22 states, all doing speed enforcement. I met with the law enforcement liaisons. We picked July 26th. So although the NHTSA speed campaign starts on July 8th and runs to the end of the month, and I would encourage everyone in your messaging to have some speed messaging in there, to slow down. And I'll talk about some of the messaging that NHTSA has here in a second. But please pass that messaging along. And then at the same time, on July 26th, it's going to be a concerted effort. We're going to have high visibility enforcement among all the states and regions 1 through 4 on July 26th. Lots of border to borders the states and law enforcement agencies have planned to conduct enforcement, along with having a lot of media posts and all that public information and education around that date and leading up to that date as well. So again, I'm not focusing on just 95, but focusing on all our roadways in all the states in all 4 regions. So that brings so some campaigns that we have coming up. July 8th to 31, I mentioned already. The taglines for these are speeding catches up with you and speeding slows you down. They're the national campaigns, and you can get all of you can see here's 2, and there's no sound with these videos, so you're not missing anything if you're not hearing anything. These are just some videos that are made for social media for those campaigns that everybody can get on trafficsafetymarketing.gov, so www.trafficsafetymarketing.gov. You can go there and you can get these. The state highway safety offices always have these retagged with their logo on there too. So MHSO can have these retagged with the MHSO logo on there. They probably sent the request in already. But these are the 2 things that start July 8th to the 31st, and it's speed focused. But again, there's nothing wrong with throwing some seatbelt messaging in there as well, but it's speed focused during July 8th to the 31st. The first part of July, the 1st to the 7th, is our impaired driving campaign. And the taglines for this one is, if you feel different, you drive different, drive high, get a DUI. That is to specifically address drug impaired driving. And then, of course, drive sober or get pulled over. And then to address motorcyclists who might be driving impaired or riding impaired, ride sober or get pulled over. This campaign, again, is the beginning of July, runs through the July 4th holidays. It's relevant, it's timely, and the messaging can help boost traffic safety communication efforts. From 2018 to 2022, there were 2,228 traffic crash fatalities on the 4th of July holiday and around the 4th of July holiday. Over 1,400 of those were a driver. 39% were drunk. And again, that age group that we always talk about, 21 to 34, represented 50% of those fatalities. They were the highest number. So that's our target audience. That age group of 21 to 34, generally males as well. Then our next campaign goes into Labor Day. So it's our next impaired driving campaign. Again, it's August 14th to September 2nd. Excuse me, probably in there somewhere. We'll probably do a impaired driving weekend in our region at least. Last year, we coupled with regions 1, 2, and 4 again to do the whole East Coast. And we had a no DUI Friday, we called it, where everybody was doing either checkpoints or high visibility enforcement or saturation patrols right before Labor Day. We'll probably do that again this year, although we haven't set a date for it. That's something I usually reach out to all the law enforcement liaisons in all those states to kind of pick a date to see what works. But the campaign starts August 14th, September 2nd. Same taglines to get dressed, drug impaired driving, which is on the increase. You know, drug impaired driving is something that we're seeing a lot of. Debbie, I know, is running the cannabis workshops, but we've seen an increase in drug impaired driving over the years, a steady increase in it. So please focus on your events on drug impaired driving, and we all have fairly robust. Maryland has a robust DRE program. Delaware's been doing some stuff with just their DREs, getting their DREs out there along 420. That's probably something you're going to see next year. A little more concerted effort from us in Region 3 for the 420 holiday. We did something this year, but next year even more. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So August through Labor Day for impaired driving across the board, whether it's alcohol or drugs. And then lastly, heat stroke prevention. Heat stroke prevention day was May 1st to kind of draw attention to it because the warmer weather was getting here. But we'd like to see you promote this throughout the year. Any chance you get to kind of promote this a little bit, especially during the summer months. Think of the heat we've been having here in Maryland. On average, 37 children die per year due to vehicular heat stroke. And there's a website. You can go to trafficsafetymarketing.gov, and that'll lead you to noheatstroke.org, but you can also go to noheatstroke.org to get some really good information. And we have a lot of stuff on trafficsafetymarketing.gov that you can use for heat stroke as well. This is important, even at lower temperatures. We're talking out high temperatures we're having here in Maryland and across the East Coast, really, across the country. But, you know, in temperatures as low as 60 degrees, that car can get up to 104, 107 degrees and kill a child in just a matter of a minute or two. So please, you know, especially with the heat we're having now, please also, anytime you can get the word out or you're talking to somebody, the tagline here is stop, look, lock. You know, stop your car, put it in park, look in that back seat before you lock the doors. Look in that back seat before you lock the doors. Make sure that, you know, you haven't forgotten. Parents, you know, are doing lots of things. Caregivers are doing lots of things. Grandparents and aunts and uncles and et cetera have lots of things. We have lots of things in our minds. And that's where sometimes they forget the child that's in the back of the car, especially if they don't have them every day. It's the grandmother or grandfather who just has the child maybe one day a week, goes out to run an errand. So stop, look in that back seat, check it, make sure you don't have your loved one, a little child with you at the time, and then lock the doors, and then go about your business. So that's all I have with updates. If you need anything from me, all of you probably have I'm on the roster, and you all have my email address. Please feel free to reach out to me, call me, send me an email, whatever you need. That's what I'm here for, to help out with whatever you need from the regional standpoint, from the NHTSA federal level. Anything I can clarify?
Yes, I have a question. For the officer-involved unbelted fatalities that you mentioned previously, is there a certain percentage of them that were actually on a traffic stop in their vehicle when they were hit?
That's a good question, Debbie, and I can get you that answer. National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, and they have their own website. They're tied in with the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. They collect all of that data. They compile all that data. And I think there were some that were sitting in their car and stopped but I don't know the exact number. I think that that's a number because they really break these down into some really finite points.
Okay.
You know, and that could very well fall under struck by, like a move over type crash, what they call a struck by. So I think they would probably capture that, but I don't want to say definitively. But I'll reach out to them for you if you would like me to, and I'll get back to you because they might just, the more I think about it, they might just capture that in their struck by data where the vehicle is stopped on the side of the road, and then it was a kind of a move over law kind of thing where they were struck by a vehicle. So they might not capture that information on the belt at that time, but it is a good idea. Put that seatbelt back on when you get inside the car. I know officers that have been saved on traffic stops because they got back in the car and they put their belt on. From being a police officer, making multiple traffic stops, is it a pain in the butt? Put that belt back on when you get back in the car. Yeah. Was I guilty of not putting it on when I was just sitting still behind a car that I had stopped? Yeah. But do I preach it now? Put that seatbelt back on, because I've seen officers that have been saved by wearing the seatbelt in the car, even stopped on the traffic stop. But I'll look into that back to you.
I think it would be different messaging for the officers if they were actually, working us stop instead of just driving down the road. I agree. Okay, interesting. Thank you, Frank. Any other questions? Okay. We're going to turn now to Myra Weeman and Ms. Anna Lewandowski from the Maryland Highway Safety Office to hear about recently passed legislation and the state's strategic highway safety plan and work zone safety campaigns.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay, so Cindy had asked if we could just review some of the new laws that passed in this legislative session. We, as the Highway Safety Office, followed quite a few laws that dealt with traffic safety. Only about 6 of the ones that we were following were implemented, and those are the big ones that I'm going to review today. You can forward, Anna. So the way I have these slides set up, since I know Cindy will send these out to everybody, is the bill number is in red on the top of the screen. The bill name is going to be below that, and then the changes, of course, will be in the boxes. If you click on the bill, it will take you directly to the legislative website and to that particular bill in case you want to read it yourself. So we'll start off with HB 513. The official name for this was the Work Zone Speed Camera Control Systems with revisions, but pretty much everybody is just talking about it as the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act of 24. And it really comes down to better protection of our highway workers and drivers in work zones. So this initiative started at the governor's office. He did put Lieutenant Governor Miller in charge of this entire project. It did include 2 very strong work groups, one for engineering and one for education. Terry Seuss of State Highway ran the engineering work group, and Chrissy Nizer, administrator of MBVA, ran the education work group. And the biggest changes from this will be 2 tiers. So effective June 1st, the fines for work zone speed cameras increased from $40 to $80. So right now, if you get one in a work zone, the ticket's going to be $80. But then on January 1st, there's going to be quite a few other changes. There's going to be a sliding scale for fines. They range from 60 to 500, which I know is a little bit confusing because effective June 1st, they went from 40 to 80. If workers are present at the time of the citation, the fine will double. There can now be more than one camera within a work zone, and they will be required to have blue flashing lights on the speed cameras within the work zones. There's also going to be some other updated signage and lighting requirements that's going to come along with that. And the next slide is going to show you a brochure that we have been working on for quite a long time. We actually started this while the legislative session was still going on. We didn't finalize it because we knew there were going to be changes. These are just two of the panels, but it's going to give the fines, and you can see what's going to happen on January 1st and how high those fines could go, especially with workers present. It is 4 panels. Anna's going to get a little bit more into the campaign, the work zone safety campaign. But these flyers have been sent for a small print job for now, and they are online under resources. Sorry, Anna, if I'm stealing any of your thunder here, but they are on zerodeskmd.gov under resources. Okay, next bill was Senate Bill 442. It's the street racing bill. Official name was street racing and exhibition driving. And what this bill is doing is it's going to alter the penalties and points for people that are participating and or engaging in street racing or exhibition driving. So it's going to increase points. There could be some mandatory court appearances, doubling of fines, and the possibility of some jail time up to 1 year. And the next slide. I think everybody has heard about the H2O events that used to take place in Ocean City, illegal street racing, loud noises from the vehicles. So exhibition driving is also defined in this bill. I mean, it's defined to a T. So if you are operating a vehicle and you're close proximity to a crowd or a large gathering, and it intentionally results in 2 or more of the 6 listed items within this bill, then all of those penalties can come with the citation, and it gets as specific as swerving or swaying, or the engine is unreasonably loud, grinding of the gears. It's really, really, really specific. So if you want to see what some of those are, you can go ahead and click that SB number on the slide that was before this one. Okay. Oh, and the points that will be assessed, as you can see, there's participation, and then there's engagement. And it ranges from a 8 point to 12 points. House Bill 102 was a motorcycle passenger restriction bill. I guess I should have noted the effective dates are also listed in parentheses underneath the title of the bill. And this bill started, it came out of a mother who was, it was a divorce situation, and her ex-husband came to pick up a child on a motorcycle, and she felt that it was an unsafe manner of travel for the child, and then realized that there really wasn't too much she could do about it, because at that time there was no law that restricted a child on a motorcycle per se. So this bill is actually spelling out that that passenger has to be able to position their feet firmly on the footrests or the pegs. And there's a picture right there of a situation where there's no way that child's foot is firmly on the peg, flat on the peg. So that's a little bit of background on this one. Next bill, House Bill 337, official title, bike lanes and shoulders, yielding the right of way, but everybody is referring to this as the Sarah Langenkamp Memorial Act. Sarah was hit and killed, unfortunately, while she was riding her bicycle in a bike lane. And this bill, which her husband fought for very strongly, is named after her. So if a driver contributes to death or serious injury of a cyclist who is riding lawfully in a bike lane, they can get up to $2,000 in fines and obviously some jail time as well. But it's not just bicycles. So it's bicycles, it's scooters, electric personal assistive devices, so motorized wheelchairs as well, if they're riding lawfully in the bike lane. Next bill, House Bill 105. There's two pieces to this. The one that's really made a lot of the news stories is a change in the ignition interlock system program, but there's also a component of this that has to do with expungement, which actually I guess that just made some of the news as well not too long ago. But the expungement is only on certain PBJs, and it gets probation before judgment, and it gets very specific on which PBJs can be expunged. Again, you can click on the red HB 105 and get more details. The other part of this, which obviously MVA plays a huge role in, is the ignition interlock for offenders who receive a PBJ. So prior to this change in Noah's law, if you received a probation before judgment, you were not mandated to have an ignition interlock installed on your vehicle. With this change, they are now requiring that interlock be installed on your vehicle. And the next slide, oops, sorry. Just to give you a point of reference, in 2023, there were 10,161 PBJs. So that's 10,161 people that received probation before judgment and did not have to have an ignition interlock put on their vehicle. All right, Senate Bill 345 is a Vision Zero implementation bill, and this really just is going to make the state be sure that a lot of their meetings dealing with Vision Zero, reducing traffic crashes, reducing serious injuries and fatalities, are open to the public, are accessible by the public, and that we're investing more into the construction needs of high crash areas. It also is going to put a high prioritization on allocating resources to those communities who are most affected by crashes. So there will be a requirement for MDOT to hold quarterly public meetings. Those meetings will have to be recorded, and we will have to find a place to place those meetings so that the public can easily access them. And I'll turn it over to Anna, who will give you some information on our Work Zone Safety campaign.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share a couple of videos and everything, but it won't let me talk and share my audio, so it's going to be a little bit of back and forth. But first, this is, as Myra said, the Work Zone Work Group was created after the crash on 695. Lieutenant Governor Miller was serving as chair. Nearly more than 24 recommendations were accepted by Governor Moore back in November, and some of those recommendations that were implemented immediately was an increased presence of state troopers, $500,000 for funding for safety campaigns, and an updated driver's manual. Obviously, the piece that the Highway Safety Office had a big part in was the creation of the new safety campaign. So it more specifically said utilizing high-profile Marylanders to spread the message about work zone safety. So we brainstormed a few different potential spokespeople for this campaign, and we started making a list. And One of the big ones that came through was Adley Rutschman, the all-star catcher from the Baltimore Orioles, and also Cal Ripken Jr. They both agreed to be part of this campaign. And then we also were able to engage with Torrey Smith, former Baltimore Raven, and then Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, and we are still working on additional high-profile Marylanders. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to stop talking for a second, but I'm going to show you about 3 or 4 videos from the campaign.
As Marylanders, we rely on our roads to get us to where we need to go. But the roadside workers who maintain these roads, they rely on us to stay safe on the job. Stay alert, be smart. Next time you see road work ahead, take the time to slow down, move over, and pay attention. It is something we can all do. Be the driver who protects roadside workers.
Hi, I'm Adley Rutschman.
And I'm Cal Ripken.
We've stepped up to the plate along with Maryland Department of Transportation to help keep roadside workers safe.
Every day, they face risks to keep our roads running smoothly.
And they're relying on us to make sure that they make it home.
Help us protect those who get Maryland where it needs to go.
Slow down,
Move over.
be the driver who saves lives.
Hey, I'm Cal Ripken.
And I'm Adley Rutschman.
We know a thing or two about looking out for our teammates on the field. And just like in baseball, we need to look out for one another on the road.
That includes our roadside workers and first responders who dedicate themselves to keeping our highways safe.
Every day, they face risks to keep the roads running smoothly. So let's do our part to make sure we're all driving safely.
Slow down, pay attention, and give workers the space that they need.
Hi, I'm Cal Ripken. You may know me as the former Orioles shortstop who played all those games in a row. On the field, staying focused and alert is the difference between winning and losing. But for Maryland roadside workers, a brief lapse in focus by drivers can be a matter of life and death. Move over, slow down, stay focused. You could save a life.
So that is just a quick overview of some of the videos we have. I won't play every single one for you, but again, we have a ton of them on our YouTube page, and they're also on our website. Since it's launched in mid-April and through June 17th, we are currently at 1.46 million views on TV advertisements, 10.7 million impressions on geo-targeted digital ads. They're geo-targeted to Maryland specifically, but we also have it within centered around where work zones are. So if people drive through work zones, they are then getting served with these ads. Social media, so far we have 4.8 million impressions, and so far we've had 14 billboards around central Maryland. These are just 2 examples of it. The campaign does extend until September when our federal funding ends for this round. And then, as Myra talked about, we do have on our website under resources and then digital resources, have our work zone safety brochure. You can download the PDF right here. Since I'm on camera, it is not going to load right now, but you can see all of our different brochures. We're about to send out an email calling attention to this, but just about every emphasis area has a brochure. You can download it, you can print it, and also you can request them from us. This is also where our social media toolkits live. But that is what we have for now. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just have a statement. I want to thank the Highway Safety Office and both of you in particular for everything you've done on this. It's really well done, and it does take a village. Is there a way for us to easily find the other strategies and any progress that are being made on them from either the engineering or education side? Because there's obviously not everything's going to go to the highway safety office.
I will check on that. I think the lieutenant governor's office was going to have more of somewhat of a tracker about everything going on, but I haven't seen anything yet. That reminded me, Debbie, on our webpage too, there's a vanity URL, zero-md.gov/work zone. Takes you to this page, which has a update on the legislation that's going into effect, and it has the campaign, but it also links to Chesapeake Region's Work Zone Safety Pledge. As Debbie said, it does take a village, and Chesapeake has been a great partner with all of this. So has MTVMA. So all of those ads that I showed you, except for the billboards, are linking to this webpage. And so people are encouraged to come here and look at all the work that is being done. But great point, and I will see what's happening with some type of tracker about all the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. And then Myra, I guess this might be more directed to your presentation. One of the things that we have paid attention to with the update on Noah's Law was the exception for employers that have vehicles assigned to them used during the workday by employees that have a PBJ, an interlock requirement. And in Maryland, that exception is allowed after the MBA process, but it does not include vehicles that employees take home at the end of the day. So if an employee that has their own assigned vehicle takes that vehicle home at the end of the day, uses it for commuting purposes, they are not allowed to have an exception to the interlock requirement. They have to have it installed. I don't hear that being advertised anywhere. That is a message that we are going to share with our members because they are employer-based. Is there any resource or information, crafted messaging that you all want to develop that I can share? Or is it okay for me to just basically clean up what I just said and put it out there? Because it's something obviously that we want to make sure employers are aware of and ready for.
So you really want the message of if they're taking a work vehicle home, they're not excluded. That's really the message you want,
Exactly.
right? You don't want the exclusion on the company vehicle message so much advertised that aren't taken home. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Debbie, and I should have included that. We don't have plans, but it's definitely something we're gonna need to discuss on our end. But if you all are gonna go forward with creating something, could you keep us in the loop?
Oh,
Because
definitely.
maybe Diana's shaking her head, maybe we could utilize what you're gonna be using. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we can talk more about that, but we're definitely going to be sharing that information. We have already started, actually. I didn't want to get too far or be too far ahead of the new law because I don't want to confuse anybody. And I'm not quite sure, would it just be for people who are arrested after October 1st and have their adjudication after that? Or would it be people who have been already arrested and adjudication is October 1st? I don't know how all of that works. So any clarity on that?
Tim Richards, it's someone who is stopped after October 1st. Is that correct? Am I correct in that? Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's retro.
Okay. So yeah, we'll work on crafting our message and share it to you. And if you can feel free to clean it up or make suggestions on how to have it be more effective. We definitely don't have a huge resource or a very experienced resource when it comes to the social media and development of materials. We're getting better, but anything you all want to add in? All right, so thank you both for that information.
Debbie, you just went out at the end. You said you don't, you're getting better with your
Oh.
social media graphic, and then you went out. What was the last thing you said?
Sorry, yeah, we're getting better with crafting messages and polishing of them up, but anything you all can do to add in, we'd really appreciate, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, the message as possible. So thank you both. Oh, sorry, I might be fading in and out. I'm just getting a message now. So I'm sorry if I'm fading in and out. I'm gonna turn this over now to Todd Lang from BMC about ongoing data analytics related to the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse.
Good morning, everyone. Todd Lang, Director of Transportation Planning here at BMC. This is a little bit of a curveball for the safety subcommittee because it doesn't include a lot of crash statistics, things like that. But I think it's interesting because it is one of the areas that we are going to be tracking. But we're waiting for a lot of the traffic to normalize after the opening of the channel and getting all of the ship traffic back into the port. And that's what we're basically going to talk about today, but also some of the analysis that we've been doing on behalf of Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and the state, trying to look at the people who were impacted, the traffic that was impacted, and try to just have a better understanding of how it is affecting travel across the region. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but the slides will be available to you. The Francis Scott Key Bridge averaged about 34,000 crossings per day. About 4,000 of them were commercial vehicles. It was a heavily weekday traveled bridge, although there was still significant travel on the weekend. But in comparison to the Harbor Tunnel and the Fort McHenry, it was really, a little bit less in terms of the travel across that bridge than the major tunnel crossings. FSK accounted for about a sixth of the travel that goes across the different crossings. So the Fort McHenry, goes about 128,000 on a weekday. Harbor Tunnel goes about 81, and by comparison, Francis Scott Key is down about 40,000. But still, by losing 1/6 of the capacity of the crossings, is having a significant impact, and we're starting to see that if you've been trying to go through either one of the tunnels during peak periods, you're starting to notice that. And the big issue also was that's where all the hazmats were going. And one of the big issues we're trying to understand right now is what is some of the new routing for hazmats, because not all of them are permit vehicles. So we're also understanding that there are some local impacts to Baltimore County, Baltimore City roadways, trying to make sure that some of the GPS traffic routers are not sending these trucks down restricted roadways in the jurisdictions. And then looking also at the long-term solutions, trying to make the case that yes, rebuilding the bridge is very important. So what was the kind of bottom line for the people who are most impacted, the people who used to use the bridge on a daily basis for commute? What used to be a 20-minute commute from Dundalk down into the airport area is now a 41-minute commute. And that's really in both directions. Now people are either having to use the Harbor Tunnel or Fort McHenry Tunnel or find their way through the city. It's really had dramatic impact for those people who were using that bridge as a commuter. We also did some routing to try to understand what were the origins and destinations of some of the trips that used to use the bridge. So on the left-hand side, you'll see kind of what was the average origin and destination for people using the bridge. This is on the inner loop. So this is people coming from the north side, basically the Middle River, Essex, Dundalk area, going south. You'll see that the catchment area isn't that large. Again, it's kind of the eastern Baltimore County, going up a little bit into the White Marsh, that type of area, and then going down mainly into the airport area. Post-collapse, all those people are, of course, moving into either the Harbor Tunnel or the Fort McHenry Tunnel, so we're starting to see those impacts. This is the rerouting going northbound in the evening. So again, people coming from the airport going back into Dundalk and Essex and those areas. And again, you'll see kind of how those routings occur. So it doesn't have as great of an impact, and there weren't as many kind of through trips that you used to utilize that bridge. But the impact we're seeing right now is the congestion that's occurring across the two tunnels. Also, we started looking at kind of the makeup of the different trips. And basically what we found were about a third of those trips that used to use the bridge were people who were actually going to or from a work location. So it was really only about a third of that. The other 2/3 were people who were doing other types of trips. So, going shopping, doing long trips. So the commuter travel wasn't necessarily that large. We also found that, day of the week, of course, Friday was the biggest day when people were using the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Pretty significant travel the rest of the week during Monday through Thursday, but there was still significant travel on the weekend periods. So we tried to start understanding kind of what is the impact, area, trying to understand where trips came from and where they were going to. This is kind of the home to work origins. So it kind of maps out with some of the modeling that was done. You'll see that a lot of the people who were utilizing the bridge, again, were coming pretty closely from the Dundalk area, the Essex Middle River area, going, south across the bridge. And where were they going to? Well, they were going to jobs right around the airport on basic. Most of the people were utilizing that, or in Northern Anne Arundel County. And the reverse trips, likewise, for people, living in Northern Anne Arundel County around the airport area going north, again, pretty close to adjacent to the bridge. And where were they going to? Most of them were going to right around the port area and to the Dundalk area, but then also places like Trade Point Atlantic. So again, the catchment area of people utilizing the bridge was that eastern Baltimore County, eastern Baltimore City type area. We started looking at what would be happening with and without the bridge moving, a couple decades forward. If we were not to build the bridge, what would be the real impacts hitting out there? The travel that was growing on all of the different routes was about 1% every year. So this goes back from 2014 up to 2023. You'll see kind of the growth that was occurring through those periods. Of course, we had COVID, we had some shutdowns while there was rebuilding around the Harbor Tunnel. But you'll see that, with the bridge, the Key Bridge was anticipated to get up to about 51,000 crossings in the year 2050. And we were starting to hit kind of what we would consider to be pretty close to maximum capacity on the Harbor Tunnel and the Fort McHenry Tunnel, even with the Francis Scott Key Bridge. But without the bridge, we're suddenly going to have major congestion at the Harbor Tunnel and the Fort McHenry Tunnel. And on the far right-hand side, you'll see the total harbor crossings. We're starting to see what we would call leakage through the local roadway system. So basically people saying, trying to avoid some of the congestion at the two tunnels and finding other ways through the city or around the Beltway to get through that crossing period. We've started to look through INRICS at some of the congested segments. You'll see these are kind of looking, and the left-hand side was the 2023 period, and then in the center period is the 2024 period. So you'll see in the morning period, some of the biggest congestion that we're starting to see is southbound on I-95 and 895 approaching the tunnels. This is the way I get into work, and we're just south of the Fort McHenry Tunnel. So I can confirm that is absolutely happening, one of the biggest issues. And then on the evening, we're starting to see the reverse. We're starting to see northbound congestion, mainly on the 95 and 895 tunnel periods. And this is additional congestion after the bridge closure. We started to look at kind of the May periods from 2023 to 2024 to try to see what segments are kind of having the most impact in terms of additional travel time. And again, we're seeing in the evening the northbound travel on 95 and 895. And then in the morning, we're starting to see, as we said, kind of the both the Harbor Tunnel and the Fort McHenry Tunnel on the southbound side, starting to see significant additional travel. But we are starting to see additional travel on places like Hanover Street and Maryland 2, some of these local roadways that are carrying some of the additional travel, and basically some of the backups that are actually occurring from 895 and 95, and those spilling over into local streets. So what has been happening? There's been weekly meetings that actually just started at 11 o'clock that I'm missing for traffic coordination. Those occur between MDOT, State Highway Administration, the Transportation Authority, MTA, the Port. Unified Command comes to those, Federal Highway, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, and us here at BMC, basically going through what everyone is hearing, what the plans are to try to address some of this additional congestion. There has been weekly traffic monitoring for some of the diversion routes and at both of the tunnels. I can say that the tunnels, Fort McHenry is seeing about a 12 to 15% increase of travel over the pre-collapse period, and the Harbor Tunnel seeing about an 8% increase on top of that. But we are starting to see, as we said, some kind of leakage also into some of the city roads and the county roads. There's been week-long traffic counts on diversion routes. We're looking at some enhancements on some of the detour routes with signal upgrades, CCTV, dynamic message signing. Looking at the truck routes that are designated by Baltimore City and Baltimore County, trying to make sure that those are enforced, but also that there's still ways for trucks to get through those different areas. And then looking at major events and construction coordination, because there are still height and width restrictions on the tunnels. So we want to make sure that anytime we have construction on some of these diversion routes, we need to understand that there may be some larger vehicles on those going through those construction routes, and we need to accommodate those. We started to do some demographic and economic analysis, and what we did was we looked at the 9 most impacted zip codes. This kind of matches that traffic catchment area that we had identified. We found that zip codes was kind of the best geography to start looking at these different areas. So who are these different people? Here's the populations in these zip code areas. But we were really understanding kind of, who are these people and what type of help do we need to get out there. So we went through each one of those zip codes. We identified different types of socioeconomic information. We pulled them together into what we called the combined impact area. That's the 9 zip codes. And then we compared that to the Baltimore Metropolitan Statistical Area and the state of Maryland. And we did find that the median household income in this impacted area is lower than the entire Baltimore MSA and the state of Maryland. And specifically, we have some areas really in Brooklyn and Dundalk, that have some really low household income. So we really need to provide some support to those people. Same thing happens in educational attainment. We find that the combined impact area does have a lower educational attainment. There's 73% of the people in the combined impact area that have less than a bachelor's degree. That's compared to 57% really in the rest of the region for Baltimore and the state of Maryland. Again, poverty status follows the same item, higher in the impact area versus the rest of Baltimore and the state. Then we looked at kind of race and ethnicity, trying to understand kind of how, when we go out there, do we need to have different types of limited English proficiency, support for these populations. Interesting, we did find that this region, the combined impact area, is less diverse than the rest of Baltimore and the state of Maryland. But there is still a significant amount of Hispanics and Latinos within this area. So we wanted to make sure that we had Spanish support when we got out into those areas. Started looking at environmental justice, trying to make the case to understand kind of, if we were not to rebuild this bridge, how would this impact some EJ communities? We did find again that the impact area has what we would consider significantly more low income and minority populations than the region. And we are able then to define specific areas that are impacted. So the light yellow shade is low income populations. The light green shade is a higher minority populations. And then those combined are in the blue area. So you can see specific areas. We also then kind of looked at each one of the zip codes for these different, and you see that again, you know, we're starting to see low income populations mostly within this specific area. Tried to look at some of the jobs. Now, Highlandtown, you think of Highlandtown, but it actually includes the port, and it also includes some of the downtown area. So that's why we see a larger jobs within that zip code. But looking at the impacted jobs, naturally, transportation and warehousing is big across this area, and those were hit the hardest as the port started to shut down. But we also have things like retail, trade, healthcare, social assistance, and government. So those are all being taken into account as we're looking at travel demand management within the area and how we can get people to those individual jobs now that they have additional travel time. Transportation and warehousing jobs, the biggest was right around the port area, but obviously Trade Point Atlantic is out there. And then on the south side, Curtis Bay also has a significant amount of transportation and warehousing. Distribution of port workers, they're mostly fairly close to the existing port in Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and Anne Arundel County. But we do have workers coming from places like Harford County, Howard County, and some other areas within the U.S. So that is just a quick little summary of some of the work we've been doing here at BMC. The work is ongoing now that the shipping channel is open. We've been told that travel patterns should start what we would call normalizing because it took a while for a lot of the boats as they were coming to America. They had to reserve a spot at a different port. Those take a long time to reroute. So we're anticipating kind of the mid-July period in which we're going to see shipping hopefully come back to normal. And that's when we anticipate, travel to, as I said, somewhat normalize, and we can really start doing some work on some of those individual detour routes. So I wanted to make this quick since it isn't necessarily directly related to, the safety subcommittee, but again, it is important. We have been doing some crash analysis, but we're waiting really for traffic to normalize. We're definitely open to any questions you might have, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd. That's very interesting. Are there plans for, I guess, plating over the directional signs for Key Bridge? That actually came to me the other day from somebody that I was working with, and I figured everybody knows it's gone, but somebody did ask me that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the destinations that are on some of the major interstate roads are no longer accessible because of the bridge. So yes, the signs have already been designed. They're actually going through the review, I think, at the meeting that's occurring right now here at 11 o'clock with Cedric and the rest of the group. So
okay, great. I'll share that.
Hey, Debbie, this is Amy. I actually work in Hartford County and live in Pasadena and was one of those that now takes the long route. But I did notice coming home yesterday through down through Curtis Creek or Curtis Bay coming into Pasadena that the signs for what used to be the ramp to go to the Key Bridge, they do have the diagonal ramp closed signs. So I have seen them going up very recently, which again, I agree. You think everybody knows, but they don't. So
that's great.
There's going up. And as part, Todd, this might be you. I'm not sure. But as part of the studies that you guys have done, obviously the traffic analysis and the impacts, have there been any numbers on larger employers and if they're as far as changing work hours or offering more work at home options? Has any information been done on that?
Yeah, we've been working actually with the Maryland Department of Transportation Secretary's office on really travel demand management, that what you're talking about. So there's individual outreach to the major employers that are most impacted on both sides of the bridge. trying to understand, what are their work hours? Can we, get more MTA service, out to these areas? Can we start doing ride sharing? Because, if your travel is doubled, a lot of your costs have increased also. So we're trying to, as you were talking about, kind of do individual outreach to the major employers that are most impacted.
I do think this.
Question.
Do you think the snack people are getting extra money? Because one of the ladies I work with, or no, goes the opposite direction than I do, and she has like now loads her car up with snacks and drinks for her commute.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you. Any other questions for Todd? Okay, so next up is Ms. Cindy Birch. She's going to share a little bit about upcoming regional safety campaign. And following that, we're going to discuss local SHSP updates. Give you all a heads up of what's coming.
Thanks. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. And thank you, Todd, for taking time to share this with the group. I've been kind of putting him on a world tour of everybody I know in the region to share that information, because even though it's not crash data, I think it's going to inform some of our crash patterns, kind of like the pandemic did, where we have different traffic flows and volumes. So anyway, the thing that I'm going to talk about for a few minutes is something we put in it's called a Unified Planning Work Program, which is basically our plan here at BMC through the BRT, through the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, of our activities and projects we're going to do for the next fiscal year. And one of them we put in there was to expand on the Orioles partnership that Kenna spoke about earlier. That's with Look Alive and with the Orioles, but we wanted to do some more here for the whole region, and we wanted to expand it to be more safety messaging, not just the Look Alive campaign, and find other ways to push messaging out there, not just through the Baltimore Orioles. So in the coming year, which starts in 4 days, we have a project in there based on recent trends, based on a lot of the things Frank said. Of course, we put in there speeding, impaired driving, distracted driving. We know there's a lot in there also with occupant protection, like he said. And since BRTB joined the Federal Department of Transportation as this group called Allies in Action, and it's people that sign on and commit to using the National Roadway Safety Strategy, Safe System Approach, all the buzzwords, all of the campaigns and programs we have out there. We committed to doing that maybe almost 2 years ago, over a year ago. So this is one of our next projects for that. So as Kenna said, this is what we currently have with our partnership with the Orioles. We're getting a lot of coverage. I'm hearing from a lot of people that just happened to see it while they were in a game, which is great. And I know our activations are going to go really well in September. So again, we're going to have those setups. So what we wanted to do is we want to do a little bit more, like I said, when Kenna was presenting her part with, if we get our funding for FY25, we want to do even more with you, our local partners, and throughout the region, and really try to integrate it a lot more with folks similar to the partnership she explained with Baltimore County Police Department. But then we also wanted here at BMC, following some of the NHTSA communications calendars, following some of the other waves or focus areas during the different time of year, not necessarily to overlap with anything. We're going to work very closely with the Highway Safety Office. We don't want to get in the way of any of the already planned media pushes going out there, but we wanted to try to use some of our channels to augment that, or to get some other messaging out that may be valid year round, may be necessary year round, but it's not a specific time where the state and the feds are able to focus their money, so during an occupant protection time period, maybe we can still put out some impaired driving stuff because that's a problem year round, something like that. Like I said, we're going to start working on it in a few days when the year starts. So far, we just have $100,000 earmarked for it, which actually is going to be a lot. We're meeting later today with some of the communications folks here at BMC to talk about that, and with it being like social media pushes and other avenues we use here for our other programs, I think we can get quite a bit for this. So it was approved by the board, and just wanted to give you guys a heads up. So if any of you have programs or major events or something going on that you would like us to focus things on, or if you want to work with us on maybe making some graphics or some materials, just let me know. We have talked about trying to have something customizable for each of our member jurisdictions, each of our counties in the city. So maybe for different times, we push out to different media in those areas and with a customized message, because we feel like that's one of the strengths we've had with Look Alive, is that it's Baltimore region focused. And that is all I have for that. If there's any questions. Okay. I will close that real quick and come back up to my agenda. That's not one to do. That one. There we go. So for local SHSPs, I know there's a couple folks on the phone. I know there was some conflict with a safe system approach project, but for those of you on the phone, feel free to speak up as I say a few things. I did want to note that in Baltimore County, I don't see anybody on here. Baltimore County Department of Public Works and Transportation actually got a consultant. They're working on the update to their SHSP. It's hard to believe it's been 5 years. And they're also working to build a Vision Zero action plan that is going to be specific to public works and transportation to help get everything all put together and documented. Carroll County has gotten access to not just the publicly available crash report data. They've pulled in their county's EMS run data and school bus violation data. They have it all mapped out, GIS layers, everything on top of each other, and they're using that to be data-driven in their plans. So when their law enforcement folks get together to try to figure out where the need is in the county at different times, they're using real-time data, or basically real-time data from those sources, to be able to look at it a few different ways, which is pretty exciting. And then in Howard County, it's also been 5 years for them. They're working, they're starting to plan ahead to be able to do the update to their plans. So I know the others, a lot of you are on similar timeframes. So in the next year or so, we're going to be looking to update all of your plans. Let's see, Tanya, I see you're on here. Is there anything you'd like to say about Anne Arundel?
Wait a minute. This meeting, I had it on my phone. Sorry.
That's okay.
I would just say that we've moved to meeting quarterly because we feel like we got to sort of more of a implementation phase and not so much building the plan as much anymore. Unfortunately, our last quarterly meeting we had to skip. Both Nestor and I were out of town or unavailable. And so our next meeting is in August, and I'm hoping to maybe draw from some of the presentations that were here today, or maybe some from a past meeting, to put together an agenda. Cindy, we can work together. But yeah, we have our action plan. We have a data dashboard. Actually, our entire Zero, if you go to our link on our website, it takes you directly to the dashboard, which has links to the plan and links to data, and links to our high injury network. I'm really pretty pleased with the initial dashboard. And yeah, we did implement speed cameras this month per the state legislation that enabled Anne Arundel County to install speed cameras around schools and on certain roads that met certain criteria. So that started, I think, June 24th, and it's a police-driven project, starting with just giving for a couple of weeks warnings, and then they'll move to citations.
Yeah, and I will say your dashboard's great. It's built all around their Vision Zero plan. So it's fully in line with that, and helps you really navigate to be able to see where the data are pointing them and why they're doing what they're doing down there. So thanks.
Mhm.
Amy, I don't know if you want to say anything about what's going on up in Hartford County.
I'm not really I'm more of the peripheral things. I find out the fact stuff's going on.
It's because you're in Pasadena. See,
Sorry. Hope to for you guys.
I haven't heard much lately, but I am going to check in with them. I hear there's still a concerted effort with Havre Grace and Aberdeen and City of Bel Air to work on. They have Safe Streets and Roads for All funding. First round of announcements came out for this year's funding. There's 3 different deadlines. So the last deadline is in a couple weeks in mid-August, but in the first round, a few things came out. So I'll include the link to that information and the ones that were awarded. I believe City of Annapolis got some funding, but they were the only ones in our region so far this year.
Yeah, I know we're doing some stuff with lighting, but I don't know how much that's tied to the safety versus more environmental type things.
Hey, lighting's still a huge safety concern, so we'll take it, right?
I mean, I guess I don't know if this is the right venue to ask this, but one of the questions was, and this might apply to some of the other counties, to get the lighting grant money, it seems that there's a requirement that there's a competitive bid component to us getting those lights. But I know most of us doesn't go with our local utility company. And so there's not really a competitive bid on that in that respect, but I don't know if like BG&E does. So is it a layer type thing? Like if as long as BG&E is doing a competitive bid, does that work for us?
I don't know the answers to that, but I know Baltimore City's doing a lot with head bike safety, so I'm sure lighting's part of that. And Howard County's doing it with Route 1. Anne Arundel's doing it a lot with their Safe Street. So maybe I'll send a message out to a few folks to try to connect you guys that
yeah, because
I would bet have lighting as part of your SS4A project. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure. Go ahead, Tanya. See your hand.
So did you say, I just want to get clarification that for the fiscal year SS4A grant that was due in May of this year, 2024, they've come out with some awardees? Because to my knowledge, the city did not apply this year. We did.
Okay. Let me pull this over here. I will show you what I was saying and we'll see if first round were announced. And in here, let's see. The first of 3 rounds. So where is it showing it?
How could they?
No, I meant the actual, here it is, the actual list. And I already had Maryland pulled up. It says City of Annapolis. So if that's you, then.
Yeah, I think that's last year's.
Is it?
Uh,
Oh, it says FY24. So maybe they
Yeah.
have last year's up there for some reason.
Yeah, so FY25, because we just put it in on May 17th.
Well, they did want to have some decisions because with the 3 deadlines, remember, if you didn't get awarded in the first one, they wanted to give you time to reapply by the last one by August. So they did make some announcements, but I'll dig into it further for you, Tanya, and let you know.
Okay, thanks.
And that is all I have. Deb, back to you.
Thank you.
Real quick,
ahead.
Cindy, when you send that, can you include if you have any, you get any information, can you include Sam Kale on that email?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Debbie.
So next on the agenda is the future of the committee. Ms. Birch had sent out a roster of the members, and the question I had for you, do we know how many new submissions there were for that roster?
Didn't really get anything from anyone, so that's why I was making this kind of a last call. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The only suggestion I have is, have we ever had anybody from AAA Mid-Atlantic on this group? They have really solid outreach messaging when it comes to traffic safety and messages for the holidays.
We may have in the past, so I will reach out to Regina and
Mhm.
include her for sure. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
Totally
Yes.
missed that. Thanks.
And does anybody else have any suggestions? Okay. We'll hear back from AAA Mid-Atlantic as to whether or not they have the ability to participate in these meetings. And if we don't hear of any other changes, then that roster will be set through 2025. Any questions for any of our speakers? Okay. On to new business. Let's hear from anybody that has any comments or anything that's going on in the future. Okay. The only thing I have is, I don't know if any of you all are interested, but for those of you from the Hartford area, and I'm not sure exactly where this school is located in Hartford, but Milton Wright has requested a mock crash. It'll be May 1st and 2nd of next year. So once school starts back up, you'll see us reaching out to local partners about putting together a valid scene based on crash data. If it's something you're interested in, you can reach out directly to me and we'll try to involve whatever your area of expertise is in the scene, if at all possible. Anybody else have anything going on? Did we ever hear back in reference to a Baltimore County mock crash or the event that she was putting together?
As far as I know, Lori is still putting it together. I think she was still confirming, she did confirm the location at Carver Tech. And
Yes.
she was still working to bring some folks on board, but she is out of the office this week. So I will pull her in next week and then send an update to the group.
Thank you. I know I saw the school location. I didn't know if she was able to get access to the classrooms during the day of the event.
That I'm not sure. So
That's what I'm waiting for. If we can
okay.
have access to the classrooms, we can probably put together something for her.
Okay.
Okay.
There's other groups, because that is my neck of the woods. I guess with this is I'm aware of, but haven't been involved with. What for other counties? What other type of groups within the county or area do you get support from? Like, would you have DPW there? Is it the sheriff's office? Is to support what you do, or how does that work?
So your question was slightly muffled, but I think the gist of it was you want to know what other partners do during the crash scenes. So we do get support from all of the first responders and the public works and or state highway agencies when it comes to putting together the scenario and the accompanying parts of it. This spring, we had state highway provide a guardrail. We also had a contractor provide a guardrail for another scene. Local tow companies set up the vehicles, crash the vehicles. The county agencies will help us make a valid 911 call, figure out exactly, exactly which roadway scenario we want to use based on crash data. The schools will provide the students and give us direction on the priority behaviors that is often supported by crash data. We let the schools decide, and we try to make it work based on the county's priorities per their SHSP or other plan.
Okay.
And they're very thorough. And then because I'm one of my strongest messages is that we don't do a shock and awe scene and then walk away. We do have other components such as a before and after behavior survey. And then after the scene outside is done, we do Q&A with the students. And then we also do a full education program in the auditorium to discuss exactly what happened in that scene that we develop and why those injuries occurred and how they change the students' lives forever. Whether it's, access to certain careers or life changes such as, social network has changed because of ostracization. I'm not sure I pronounced that right. You know, and license status and possible jail or fines. We often have support from the courts when it comes to doing something. We've had judges present. In the past, state's attorneys present during the Q&A. So they're pretty comprehensive, but we're always needing to be adaptable because things happen.
Right. Do you have like, maybe not out on a website, but maybe as an internal resource, do you have
Yep.
like a sample kind of, or a video of how you were kind of overview of this?
So you broke up again a little bit, but I do have two resources. One is if you go to Chesapeake Region Safety Council's YouTube channel,
Okay.
you'll
You-
see 5 or 6. One of the most popular ones is, actually there's 2 that I suggest. One is a move over law focus that we did with a tow operator fatality in Calvert, and I think that's 2018. And then we did one in Hartford at Patterson Mill in 2022, maybe. That I think that one has about 15,000 views, and that one was a distracted crash scene. Sheriff Gaylor opened it up along with the Chrissy from the Highway Safety Office did opening remarks. And so both of those are full scenes where you can see from beginning to end, even with the speakers, what their messages are. And without going on about them too much, that's
Right.
one resource. And the other resources, we have a very brief recruiting partner flyer. If you, I can search for your email and send you something if you want. Sorry.
Figured since I'm kind of forward to this aspect of it, having a chance to look at that and then see maybe how on, at least tomorrow, the traffic engineering, how we could support the process if it's not something that's already in there, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel for people either, so
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome. Cindy, can you take over for a minute?
Sure. And actually, it's just for a
Sorry.
minute. Unless there's any other new business anybody wants to share. Okay, and so I'll just remind everybody our next meeting is scheduled for September 26th. We'll be virtual still. Get a glass of water, Deb. Hopefully she feels better here any second. And I want to thank all of our speakers and all of you that did attend today. I'm going to send out a link to the recording and make sure we get it posted right away. So other folks that couldn't join us, unfortunately, that was quite a bit. So we'll get that out, and otherwise we'll go ahead and end the meeting. So thank you. I apologize for going over 15 minutes, but I think there was a lot of great information to share today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I've recovered. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Stay cool.